So War Tycoon as a game is known to be having a lot of real-life vehicles which people constantly request. However, along with them, there's also a ton of unrealistic ones which don't even exist in real life. Therefore, in today's video, guys, I'd like to actually cover some of these vehicles. Since you guys have been really enjoying my videos where I rant about this type of stuff, I'm happy to do some more. But anyway, before we start, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. We are slowly on the way to reaching 50,000 subscribers. So anyway, we're gonna be starting off this list pretty light with the F47. As we move down the list, that's where things start to get even more crazy, to the point that you can't even believe how these vehicles are possibly in the game. And you guys already know what vehicles I'm talking about. So the F47 is essentially America's next upcoming beast, which is supposed to replace the F-22 Raptor as another air supremacy fighter. And this is supposed to just have some of the best technology in the world. Except I do have some marginal issues with the F47. For one, this vehicle doesn't even exist in real life yet. It hasn't been mass produced. However, another thing is that it does have a lot of incorrections when it comes to its model. Next off, we have the Abrams X, and you know, it's kind of funny of me saying this since Abrams X is my favorite tank in the game. However, the reason why this vehicle is unrealistic is because this is essentially just a left-behind technology demonstrator, which never actually came into full production, never actually became a proper prototype, not something that America ever considered actually mass producing. And the reason why that's the case is simply because that they recently actually introduced a brand new American tank, which is going to be the M1E3 Abrams, which essentially uses very similar technology to the Abrams X itself. It has a javelin, it has really good drone warfare, it's supposed to be a pretty stealthy tank, and it's just supposed to be a 2030 tank from the future. And that's what the M1E3 Abrams is going to be. The Abrams X will never actually be mass produced. However, if you want to view these vehicles as the same thing, then I guess you can to an extent. However, I think it will be really cool if the developers ever actually make some changes to the Abrams X and perhaps maybe replace this thing with the M1E3 Abrams, which is actually confirmed to be mass produced at some point. Now, next off, we have the PLO-1, and the reasoning that it's gonna be going into the PLO-1, it's kind of similar to the Abrams X, but as you guys can even see by the vehicle's title, this is a Polish concept light tank. Once again, not even a prototype. It is not a vehicle that actually is supposed to go into full production, and its plans have actually been left behind for at least a few years as far as I know now. I believe this vehicle was suggested in 2013 to actually be something that the Polish military would consider, but it's not something that's ever actually going to be coming, and I guess you may as well say that this tank is so extremely stealthy that we're never going to get to see it. Now, next up, we have the SR72 Darkstar, which is a ultra-fast aircraft built for high-speed missions. And in real life, the whole goal of this vehicle, in a sense, was to be a reconnaissance aircraft that does not carry any types of missiles. This is just supposed to be a vehicle that is able to outmaneuver its opponents, for one, through being able to go Mach 3 as far as I know, but also just simply being able to travel at higher altitudes than any other plane in the world. And you know, the one issue which I do have with the Darkstar, as cool as it is, unfortunately this thing is once again just another concept aircraft. It has never been flown, never been mass produced to any extent. It's not even a prototype in any way. And I don't understand why they added this thing if they could have added the SR71 Blackbird, which is a vehicle that was actually flown before. It is retired now, however, it is something that does actually exist, unlike the SR72 Darkstar. I think this vehicle is extremely cool, and in a way it does actually work in this game. I do like the overall idea of it, since this is the only plane that can fly at such high altitudes. Except it doesn't exist, which is why it's on the list today. Now, next up, moving into a vehicle that I know a lot of you guys hated when it was first added. I slowly grown to accept the Seahawk, however, of course I have to mention it today. The reasons why this thing is so high on the list is, for one, this vehicle doesn't even exist. For two, it has a completely unrealistic feature, which is, of course, giving this thing a cannon. I know that the vehicle was never actually planned to have a cannon, and it doesn't have a cannon in any way, but with this, it also just became so overpowered in this game, and for months straight, this vehicle was just dominating the meta to the point that almost nothing was able to stand in its way. Like, this thing was busted OP. However, slowly I've seen that its use has went down. Now, next up, moving into our our favorite Back to the Future car. And oh my god, obviously you guys know I have to mention it in this list today. I don't have a problem with the DeLorean existing in the game. I think it's an extremely cool vehicle to add as a whole. However, just think about it, guys. This is a flying car. It doesn't really make that much sense for it to not be on this list, since flying cars are obviously unrealistic. I bet we will have some flying cars in real life. Maybe in 20 years there's gonna be some developed that actually work, but who knows, maybe it's just me being overly optimistic. Either way, the DeLorean is cool, I just had to put it on this list. Now, next up, moving into the HACV Overlord, and oh my god, guys, this thing doesn't even exist. It's never been a concept, it's never been a prototype, it never has been suggested. This is a completely made up vehicle by the developers, and I'm gonna be honest, whenever it was first added to the game, this thing was so insanely broken when it came to strength. It didn't make too much sense for this thing to be as strong as what it actually is, since it's just a hovercraft. One bullet should be more than enough to pop this thing and just kill it in a second, but then again, the helicopters can still do that to some extent. However, any other vehicle class really does struggle. Now, next up, moving into the number 3 position, we have the USS Independence X. Of course, your guys' most favorite vehicle of all time. Obviously joking, please don't cancel me. But anyway, this is once again just a completely made up vehicle that's never been invented by the American Army. There's never been plans to add it in real life. However, Tycoon decided to just reskin the USS Independence and mount a railgun on it, which is to an extent pretty unrealistic to mount railguns on warships. It's just not something that actually works in real life. Yet, I'll definitely put a yet on that one, because currently, I believe Japan and America are together working on a railgun ship. But either way, a Star Trek looking skin with a railgun mounted on top of a USS Independence just doesn't work, man. Not for this game, but hey, I'm not gonna complain about it too much, because either way, this vehicle is still pretty fun. Now, of course, moving into the number 2 position, a vehicle which just cannot be excluded from this list, the Golden F-35. Once again, just a completely invented meme vehicle that's in a lot of military games for some reason. Tycoon decided to add this just for April Fools, for the funnies, for the jokes. This thing is a golden variant of the F-35 with zombie-seeking missiles, a golden beam, and golden missiles and bombs. I think you guys can already understand why this vehicle is extremely unrealistic. And now, of course, in the number 1 position, the most unrealistic vehicle in the game by far, in my opinion, and you cannot change my mind on this, is the AV8 Reaper. This is the definition of a Tesla Cybertruck being put into a hovercraft. But you know what? It surprisingly kind of works. This thing looks silly as they get. However, in a way, this vehicle is actually pretty cool after they added it. You know, it's not really that good of a vehicle on release, it was pretty decent. However, just being able to do all the crazy maneuvers with this and just going around the environment, it's just so fun to use this thing. But the main reasons why it's so unrealistic is because, for one, the hovercrafts are not designed in the way that this thing is. It just feels like it's a mix of the Tesla Cybertruck and a hovercraft from real life at the same time. I feel like the developers just had so much better options to add as hovercrafts. For example, the Zuber class hovercraft, something like that would have worked, or maybe different type of transportation hovercrafts, as that's what these vehicle class is actually used for. However, either way, this almost feels like it's a collab with Elon Musk in some way. But anyway, guys, for the time being, that's gonna be everything. Do let me know in the comment section down below what, in your opinion, is the most unrealistic vehicle in Tycoon. I did have some kind of bias by putting the AV8 Reaper on top, but come on, you just cannot keep this thing below the top 3. But yeah, if you guys would like to see more videos just like this, make sure to subscribe. We are on the way to hitting 50,000 subscribers.